What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today I want to do a video on my 2021 favorites and where they are in my collection right now. I just recently watched my own video and it's so fun to see because that was my first year on YouTube. This is my second, so this is the first time of me kind of reacting to something that I made. Also, I changed up my lighting a little bit. I did one big light over there and one light at the back. Let me know if you like this because I do think it kind of adds some depths, and I don't know, I feel like I look better. Like always, it's a combination of studio lighting and natural lighting. If I only do natural lighting, you're not gonna see the products very well because it is winter time in the Netherlands. Anyway, let's get to the video. The one thing I noticed was that I started with skincare, and I'm not gonna do that right now. I don't want to talk about skincare. I want to kind of run through this video, and I have the list in front of me of everything that I use, and I didn't start with a primer. Like, apparently I didn't have any great primers that I used. So instead I decided to use a mid 2022 favorite of mine, which is the AURIC GLOWLUST, and mine is over halfway. I have about like this much left, so it's definitely a product that I will finish. I assume I will finish in 2023. I still love this product. It has a nice coverage, it has a nice glow, and you can use this all over the face and just go out like that and you get very glowy skin. My one but with this is I feel like it wears better in the winter time than it wears in the summertime because it's a little thick compared to, for example, the Charlotte Tilbury Hollywood Flawless Filter and the Lisa Eldridge Elevated Glow, I believe it's called. So it is in my collection and it does get used quite a bit. It's in proper rotation, but I don't think I will repurchase this once it is gone. It's a beautiful product. It's just not the one thing that I love. I have others that definitely are better than this one right now, but those will be mentioned in a different video where I show my 2022 favorites. So subscribe to my channel if you want to see that. Then for foundations, I mentioned two foundations. On my number 2 spot, I mentioned the Westman Atelier Vital Skin Foundation Sticks, and I mentioned the Lisa Eldridge Foundation as my number 1. Now, I miss my Lisa Eldridge foundation, but I got a shade that was way too dark for me. Shade 15 worked for me for about 2 months of the entire year, and I always had to try to mix it with other foundations because the moment I lost a little bit of tan, it just wasn't my shade. In my recent Lisa Eldridge video where I show you guys the eyeshadow palettes, in eyeshadow palette look 1 to 3, I am wearing shade number 13, but that one kind of oxidized on me and I felt like shade 15 did too. The finish, however, is probably one of the best finishes I've ever had. The only reason I decided not to repurchase it is because right now I'm kind of into this sheer coverage foundation moment or no foundation, and that one is quite a light to medium to even like higher coverage foundation. I did, however, for the demo decide to put on these Vital Skin Foundation Sticks. I still think this is a beautiful product. I use number 3 way more than number 5, but I have this much left of the number 3 one. It is in rotation as well. I like to use these when I go traveling, for example. It doesn't take too much space and the magnet is really strong, so I don't have to worry about this too much leaking anywhere. It definitely has been dethroned, not with other stick foundations. It's still the best stick foundation I own, but definitely not the foundation that I would consider my best foundation of this year. Then for concealer, I mentioned 2 concealers, and my number 1 concealer was the KOSAS concealer. The KOSAS concealer I finished and I bought a new one. So this is my second version of the KOSAS concealer, and I did buy a different shade. I got 3N this time because I do run a little yellow. It's still in my top 2 concealers of all time, and most likely will make a revisit in my 2022 favorites together with another concealer. Then for powders, I had 2 powders that I mentioned in that video, and both of these powders I still have in my collection. On my number 2 spot, I had one that I actually panned completely, but I had a backup ready, and it's the Boots number 7 powder. This is an amazing powder, and it's kind of like a drugstore pricing. I think I paid like 13 euros for 2 powders. I love to bring this powder along with me when I go traveling because all of my powders are so expensive and I'll be so pissed so pissed if one of them broke. So this is kind of my great powder, anxiety proof powder, but not one that you'll see a lot of because I am a luxury beauty niche channel. Still a favorite of mine. Like I said, I finished the other one, completely padded, was completely gone. And there's a nice divot in this one. Again, great for traveling and not a bad product if you're into both luxury and drugstore makeup. If you can get this one, I definitely still would recommend this one. Then for my number one powder, I have the Chantecaille powder. Now I cannot believe I still haven't hit pan on this, but I'm really close. If you can actually see it really close up, you see the bottom is peeking through. Definitely think that I'm going to be panning this anytime soon. It's still one of my favorite powders. It's not my favorite anymore, but it's a great one for all over the face. But I need a little extra oomph when it comes to powders underneath my eyes. I do get quite oily underneath the eyes, and this is a little bit too sheer for me to continue on using. Since I only powder or mostly powder underneath the eyes on a daily basis, I don't reach for this powder as much anymore. I have other powders I reach for, but it's still a great powder, and it's a great one to compare with to other powders. Then for complexion products, I mentioned two contour products. One I mentioned as my favorite one is the Westman Atelier contour stick in the shade Biscuit, which is so exciting because in that video I mentioned I think I'll get to the end of it by 2022. This is it. So I have to really dig into it to get to the final bits because I can't roll it up anymore. This is an expensive contour stick, and if you ask me if I will repurchase it, I'm gonna tell you right now, I do think I am going to repurchase this. It's expensive, and the one product that's giving this a run for its money is the Makeup by Mario contour stick. You get way more product. They're very close in how you apply them and how they function. So emollient wise, they're really easy to blend out. This one is a little bit more of a contour color than the Makeup by Mario on me. I believe I have mine in the shade light medium, the Makeup by Mario one. That one is great value for money. It's just a great contour stick as well. And I debated which one I actually think is better. I hate the packaging of the Makeup by Mario one because I always like I always open it and then I have the brush side and I'm like, oh, this is so frustrating. But packaging is not the only reason why I would prefer the Westman Atelier one. I think this is a better contour color for me, and sometimes that's kind of what I'm gravitating towards, but I'm just being very critical. I just think that this one does a little bit better in contouring, but both of them are extremely well done. In that video, I set my contour with my NUDEGASM palette by Charlotte Tilbury. This is still a really great palette. Charlotte Tilbury came out with a Pillow Talk face palette, and out of the two, so this NUDEGASM and the Pillow Talk palette, I still reach for this more. This one is definitely my favorite. The embossing is near to gone, and I definitely still layer my contouring with this one. It's just a perfect shade. Yes, these are so expensive. Yes, it's unfortunate that I don't use a lot of these other colors, but you know, as a full-on face palette, I feel like this works a little bit more. I could use this as a blush, I use this as a bronzer, I use this as a contour, I use this as a highlight. I just use this palette a bit more, and the colors kind of speak to me more than the Pillow Talk palette. Formulation wise, I think both of them are absolutely amazing, and I also like the packaging of the Pillow Talk palette a bit more, but this is still a winner and I think top 3 of best face palettes that I ever bought. Since we're talking about face palettes anyway, the other face palettes that I mentioned in that video is this face palette by Charlotte Tilbury. This is the Pretty Blushed Beauty palette. I don't think you can get this anymore, but if you can, because Net-a-Porter actually had this still in stock, this is such a great palette. I actually think that this would be my number 1 right now. This is a great palette for traveling because it has the Flawless Filter Powder, it has the Film Store Bronze and Glow in here, it has a great eyeshadow trio, it has a pretty good blush. The formulation is pretty good, and overall this is probably the best overall palette to travel with, and I have mentioned this a few times on my channel that I think that this palette is so worth it. So if you can still get this anywhere, I definitely would still recommend it. The other face palette that I mentioned is the NATASHA DENONA what is this, Glam face palette in light. Guys, I don't use this in the demo for my video, but this is still one of my favorite palettes for a great quick nude eye. I like the highlighter in here, I like the blush in here, it didn't dry out yet. It's just an amazing palette. I love this palette for the eyeshadows. Let's be specific about it. The eyeshadows in here are phenomenal. The metallics in here are absolutely phenomenal. And I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes, but I do consistently reach for this one every single month. At least once. Then I talked about bronzers, and the best bronzer that I mentioned is the Victoria Beckham Beauty Bronzing Brick in shade 2. I cannot believe that I didn't pan this one either. There's so much product in here. And if you ask me if this is still a favorite, I'm gonna say hell yes. The packaging is still superior to most of my bronzers. I love that it's refillable. I love the fact that I still didn't hit pan, even though this is in rotation with my bronzers. I don't have that many bronzers, so it's in a weekly rotation. I love the finish of this, and there's one other bronzer that's giving this a run for its money as in the position of the best bronzer, but it's in top 2 for sure, and maybe even still the best. But you gotta see my 2022 favorites because I'm still trying to figure it out. Then blushes. I spoke about so many blushes, so I'm gonna just kind of power through. One blush that I spoke about was the Rare Beauty Melting Pot. I got mine in the shade Nearly Neutral, and I mentioned that I was hoping to pan this, and as you can see, I hit pan on it. It's a beautiful blush, but I'll be honest with you, I don't really reach for this one anymore. I like the other blush formulation, the Soft Pinch Blush formulation by Rare Beauty better, and this one isn't really long wearing. It's great for a no makeup look, but I have too many blushes, and this one gets overshadowed by all my other ones. Then another cream blush formulation that I mentioned that I like way more this year is the blush formulation by Victoria Beckham Beauty, especially the shade Playground. I added another one in my collection called Fever. I like it more and more. I had to really get to know this blush a little bit before I could definitely say like this is the blush formulation for me, but it's getting used, especially the shade Playground. It's such a great blush. I put it in my top 5 of Victoria Beckham Beauty. Check out that video to see which other products that I recommend from the line, because it is one of my most featured and favorite videos to do. Then best cream blush formulation, I mentioned the Westman Atelier Baby Cheeks blush sticks, and this one is a newer one in my collection. This is probably gonna be in my 2022 favorites, so spoiler alert, but this still is one of my favorite blush formulations for cream. I'm gonna put it on number 1. This newer shade is called Mimi, which is the shade that dominated 2022, and I'm absolutely still in love with the formula. It lasts a long time. I like to layer it with my powders, and this blush color, so this nudie beige color, is so like my shade. I've been getting everything in this color. I think most of you would agree that it's one of the best blush formulations in terms of cream. I'll admit I don't use them all consistently, but Mimi, Chouchette, Petal, and Bichette are the ones that I pull for the most. I mentioned only one powder blush, and that is the Chantecaille 2021 Pearl blush in AKOYA. This was the holiday collection by Chantecaille. I still think this packaging is so superior to what they did this year. That collection really like spoke to me so much. I had to get all of them, and this I use sort of as a blush topper. It is in rotation, like I do use it less because I don't really go for blush toppers. I just think it's an added, how can I say this, like it's just an added step that I don't always have time for. But this is a beautiful color, and I compared this to one of my Tweed blushes by Chanel, and I basically said this formulation is superior to the Tweed blushes by Chanel. It's easier to use, you do get a little pigment, but I actually love the shine on this. Chantecaille is such a great blush formulation. The shine, like the sheen you get, there's no glitter in here. The sheen you get with this formulation is so beautiful, and the packaging is so beautiful. Yes, this formulation is a favorite of mine. I then finished off my base with this setting spray by Tilbury. I'm not a huge setting spray person, but this is a great setting spray. Your makeup definitely lasts longer with this setting spray, and you know, I use this quite a bit and I still feel like I have so much to go. I don't think I will be able to finish this in 2023, but guys, if you're looking for a great setting spray to fix your makeup into place, this is a great one, and my makeup looks better every single time I use this. I forgot highlighters, guys, so let's just mention highlights quickly. I mentioned 2 highlighters. My number 2 position was from the same Chantecaille collection, the highlighter, I believe this is called PERLE LUMIERE. Ah, this is such a beautiful highlighter, guys. It still has a little bit of that embossing. The packaging, so it's a little bit bigger than the blush, but it still comes with those beautiful pearls. This is a unique highlighter in my collection because it's the only one with a bit of a lilac sheen to it. But I love Chantecaille's highlighter formulation because it's not like chunky glitters. It's a very refined highlighter. Definitely for people that like a little bit more no makeup. I'm absolutely still in love with this highlighter. I admit I don't use this too much because of the lilac sheen. I don't wear a lot of lilac looks. But in terms of formulation, still a stunning formulation. And having it in my collection really makes me happy. The other highlighter that I mentioned is my Westman Atelier Superloaded Tinted Highlight in Peau de Pêche. And this year I added one more Superloaded Tinted Highlight in my collection. I added Peau de Santé, which is the one that I used in the demo just to switch things up. I'm still in love with Peau de Pêche. I think that is my favorite one out of the Superloaded Tinted Highlights. But I think this look was asking for Peau de Santé. This is a really nice soft peach, whereas Peau de Pêche is like a more true peach. I use these as blushes and highlighters in one. Peau de Pêche can sometimes even add a little bit of that bronzy tone, so it's sort of like a hybrid product. And this formulation is still a favorite of mine by far. It's the best product that I can recommend from the brand Westman Atelier. Yes, it's hella expensive, but if anyone would ask me where do I start with Westman Atelier, it's definitely the Superloaded Tinted Highlights. Then for brow products, I mentioned 3 brow products. I mentioned my number 2, which now I consider my number 1, but on my number 2 spot was my Gucci brow pencil. And look guys, it's at the end. Like I literally have this for this video because sharpening this is not fun anymore. Using this is not fun anymore, but this color is absolutely stunning. This is like the perfect brow color for me, number 4 from Gucci. Yes, dead as I would love to repurchase this, but I have a few brow products right now, so I told myself that I should at least try to get through some of the brow products that I have, and if I then still feel the need for this product, I will repurchase it. But right now it's just kind of like standing on its last legs. Last year my number 1 brow product was the Rare Beauty what is this, eyebrow duo. I still love this. I've hit pan on one of the shades, the one that I use the most, and I think it's a great formulation. I like brow pencils more right now. It's just a bit finicky. That's all I can say about it. It's a great product. It's in my rotation, but it's not my favorite. I also mentioned the KOSAS brow what is that, brow gel, the AIRBRUSH in dark brown. I don't have it anymore. I finished it, and I do think I might buy the KOSAS clear one, but I didn't feel the need to repurchase the dark brown color, the tinted one. Also because I've been doing my brows a little differently, and I definitely like clear brows more and just filling in a little bit of the sparse areas. I definitely like my brows to be way more simple than I did last year. So I don't go into eyeshadow palettes in these videos because it just gets too long. But the 2 favorite eye products that I mentioned are the Liquid Lyric Shadows by Lisa Eldridge and the, what is these called? The Victoria Beckham Beauty Lid Lusters. And if you are a follower of my channel, then you know that these have been featured multiple times this year as well, and these are still favorites of mine. I decided to use a new color from the Liquid Lyrics line. This is the shade Nice, and it's kind of like this pewter green antique gold color. I don't use this color a lot, but I definitely feel like today was the occasion to use it. And I went over it with my Chiffon color by Victoria Beckham Beauty. This is still a favorite of mine and one of my favorite ones of the entire line when it comes to lid lusters. I love the lid lusters, and one of my most asked questions is which formulation do you prefer the most? And I think I want to do a dedicated video on these 2 products where I compare the 2 and I show you guys why I like one more than the other one. Then for eyeliner, I talked about the Rouge Beauty eyeliner. I don't have that one anymore. That one only lasted me 3 months and then it dried out completely. I then switched to my Makeup by Mario one, which I considered to be the lesser one out of the 2 at the time, but this one has lasted me all year and it's still going strong. So formulation wise, I actually think that the Makeup by Mario one is better than the Rouge Beauty one. It's been very dependable in my collection to have this one, so no, that's not my favorite liquid liner anymore. I also mentioned the Santa Kajal liners. eyeliners. I mentioned the shade Cocoa in that video by Victoria Beckham Beauty. In this demo, I wear Olive. I feel like that's a nice one to use with a nice because of those green tones in there. And it's still one of my favorite formulations when it comes to eyeliners. And I like to use this as a eyeshadow base, for example, and it gives a little bit more dimension. My last liner that I mentioned is this Charlotte Tilbury one. I still think that the Super Nudes, the nude side is still one of the better nudes that I've ever tried. This year I tried the Victoria Beckham Beauty nude one. I think that color is a little bit more yellow, which is fine by me to have it a little bit more yellow, but that formulation again is so emollient. It's basically gone by 3 seconds, so it's kind of useless. The mascara that I mentioned in that video is the Victoria Beckham Beauty Future Lash Mascara, and I did go ahead and repurchase it during the sale, but for this demo, I'm using my Rare Beauty mascara. Then I have so many lip products that I mentioned. Let's first talk about the lip liner that I mentioned that I used today is the Lip Cheat by Charlotte Tilbury in the shade Foxy Brown. Guys, if you don't have this liner, I'm telling you, you should get it. It's the best brown if you want to do kind of like, what are that, Hailey Bieber lips or just, you know, 90s lips. It's such a great one to combine with a beautiful nude. There's so many lipsticks that I have that I combine this one with. It's still a staple of my collection, and it's just one of those things I'm like, guys, get it and then you'll understand how great this is. Then for Charlotte Tilbury lipsticks, I mentioned both the Kissing formula and the matte formula, so the Matte Revolution formula. I mentioned Cover Star from the Matte Revolution formula. That's still a freaking great lipstick if you ask me. Yeah, I still pull for it if I want to do a very beautiful 90s nude lip together with the Foxy Brown Lip Cheat. I mentioned the Kissing formulation Runway Royalty. Okay, I definitely have moved away a little bit from the pinks, but the one that I'm using a lot right now is Island Dream. I used it in my last Charlotte Tilbury video. Again, great one to combine with this lip liner, and then you can get a less intense 90s lip and a little bit more of a, in my opinion, modern lip. Oh, my light went out. Anyway, I'm just gonna continue, who cares? I also mentioned the Rouge Beauty Stilo. Freaking great stilo if you ask me. I don't wear reds too much, but if I like to go for a true blue toned red, this one is still a great one, and this is the best formulation I feel from the brand. I would love to have more colors, but I review so much makeup that I don't always have the money to buy Rouge Beauty. I also mentioned the Lisa Eldridge lipsticks. If you follow my channel, you know that I bought more of these lipsticks this year. For this demo, I decided to use a Velvet Fawn, but last year my favorite two shades were Velvet Affair and Velvet Muse. Oh, kidding, Velvet Cinnabar and Velvet Muse. Velvet Cinnabar is my favorite autumn shade. Velvet Fawn is my newest favorite, and yeah, I think those are my favorites. So I decided to use a Velvet Fawn instead for this video, and I loved the way that this look turned out. I also mentioned, and I'm so happy I mentioned this is one of my favorite formulations for a gloss, the Victoria Beckham Beauty Posh glosses. The reason I like these so much is because they stay on the lips for such a long time. Next to that, I mentioned the Rare Beauty Nearly Neutral Tinted Balm. I have no idea what these are called, but you know what I mean? These are like the balm glosses. Mine is finished. There's nothing in there anymore. I've thoroughly enjoyed this formulation and it's so nourishing. Both of these I can highly recommend. My last one that I mentioned that I loved is the Westman Atelier Squeaky Clean Lip Balm. So I struggle with this one because I feel like the Squeaky Clean Lip Balm and this one, I actually feel like the Rare Beauty one is better because it lasts longer on the lips. Not necessarily the pigment, but the feeling of the nourishment, and I think that that's a little bit more important to me than the pigment. It's a beautiful formulation. I actually broke mine and repurchased it. I have mine in the shade Nana, so not a bad formulation. But honestly, I don't think it's one of my favorite formulations, if I'm completely honest. It's just a favorite, but not like my favorite. You know what I mean? Anyway, guys, I think those are all the products that I talked about last year, and some of these are still my favorites. I'm so happy to say that I didn't just, you know, chuck everything away and after a review never use them again. No, I definitely have a rolling collection, and I try to keep my collection a little bit more condensed. I also feel like there are a few brands that do really well on my channel and you guys really like to see, so I do want to just stick to those brands a little bit so that at least I can get, what does Khaki Beauty always say, like a like a thesaurus, encyclopedic knowledge on a few brands, because if I try too many brands, I definitely can get overwhelmed a little bit. So Lisa Eldridge, Victoria Beckham Beauty, and Charlotte Tilbury are in my top 3 brands that I will follow for next year. And I have a second tier of other brands that I potentially will follow as well, but maybe less intense as those top 3 brands, just to let you know what my channel holds. It still means that sometimes I'll purchase something for my channel. Like for example, for my Black Friday purchases, I bought everything from Tower 28 that I needed to do a full face of Tower 28. So that is, for example, something that you'll see next year. So it doesn't mean that I'll exclusively only do product reviews of those 3 brands, but more like those are the 3 brands that I'll hyper focus on my channel. I'm also trying to buy a little bit less, so instead of buying every single color, when a launch comes out, maybe buy 1 or 2. For example, if there's 5 blushes, buy 1 or 2 blushes for review and seeing if I like them. Thank you guys all so much for sitting out this long video. I hope you guys like this. I personally really like doing this and just seeing my collection again, and most of these products I have touched, you know, in this last year I have touched and loved and used. So I feel accomplished. I'm happy with my 2021 recommendations because they were pretty solid, and I loved doing this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well, and if you did, then please make sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel if you like some of the brands that I talked about, because these are some of the brands that I do feature on my channel. Regardless if I hyper focus on certain brands or not, these are definitely brands that I'm interested in and follow myself, and if they come out with a launch that I just cannot miss out on, I'll definitely still review these brands. What else can I say? Comment down below if you have any questions. Check out my last year's video. I know they're going to be the same products, but it's definitely fun to see how my growth on this channel has, you know, has been. The lighting has changed, the talking has changed, and I still don't know when to shut up. Anyway, guys, I'm going to round up the video here. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!